Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Kevin Aldridge, and I used to live in the shadows of marble columns and family pride. I was born into one of the wealthiest families in New England, yes, those Aldridges. The estate was massive, the cars imported, and the dinner parties boasted governors and billionaires alike. But don't let the gold trim fool you. What was inside that mansion wasn't warmth or family, it was control. Expectations. Appearances. And my father, Wallace Aldridge, was the architect of that empire, and my cage. He built Aldridge Holdings from the ground up, real estate, energy, finance, you name it. He loved to boast that he turned every handshake into a signature and every signature into a legacy. But the only thing Wallace truly loved was control. I was his firstborn son. Which, in our world, didn't mean love or guidance, it meant I was groomed to serve. You don't get to choose, Kevin, he told me at 12, when I said I wanted to be an engineer. You get to inherit. I tried. God, I tried. Ivy League education. Check. Fluent in 3 languages. Check. By 28, I was the senior VP of development at Aldridge Holdings, and still, I was just Wallace's obedient reflection in the boardroom. Everything changed on Thanksgiving. The Aldridge mansion glowed with chandeliers and polished egos that night. Extended family, business partners, and the usual vultures filled the dining hall. It was tradition, the Aldridge Thanksgiving Gala. A fusion of turkey, toasts, and deals whispered behind crystal glasses. I sat 2 seats from the head of the table, across from my younger brother, Trent, who had always been the carefree golden boy. While I followed rules, Trent lived without them, and somehow, my father adored him more for it. Then came the toast. My father stood. He didn't even need to tap the glass. The room hushed like God had entered. His voice boomed, full of confidence, pride, and arrogance. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Tonight, I share not just gratitude, but a milestone. Kevin, my son, will soon be engaged to Celeste Barrington, daughter of Senator Barrington. The room broke into applause. My chest tightened. Celeste. I had met her once, at a fundraiser. We barely spoke. I hadn't even known she remembered my name. I turned to my father, confused. What are you talking about? Wallace's smile didn't falter. It's time, Kevin. This alliance will secure the Barrington pipeline deal. It's good for the company. For the company, I echoed, numb. You're using me. His eyes sharpened like glass. You're my son. You do what's required. No. The applause faded into silence. You could hear forks drop. I won't marry her, I said, standing. I'm not a pawn in your empire. That's when it happened. He picked up his glass of red wine, and with a flick of his wrist, he flung it at me. The cold splash hit my forehead, soaked my face, and trickled down the front of my crisp white shirt. It wasn't the wine. It was the final straw. The moment I realized I was never a son. I was never loved. I was a branded asset, now publicly disowned. You ungrateful disgrace, my father growled. Get out. I looked around. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Trent leaned back with a smug smile, sipping his drink like he was watching a TV drama. I walked out in silence. Back to my apartment, company owned, of course. I should have known what was coming next. The next morning, someone knocked. A legal rep, slick hair. Slicker voice. Mr. Kevin Aldridge, your employment has been terminated. Effective immediately. The apartment, vehicle, and accounts associated with Aldridge Holdings are no longer available to you. That was it. No hearing. No appeal. I had been erased. He handed me a thick envelope and left. Inside, my pink slip. And a freezing notice on my primary bank account. The company one, where my salary had always gone. I checked my personal savings. Just under $200,000. For most people, that's a fortune. But I'd been raised with private jets and club memberships. I didn't even know how much rent cost. Later that day, they towed my car. The same Bentley I once took to board meetings. Now just another thing I didn't own. I sat on the couch in that cold, empty apartment, still in my wine-stained clothes, watching my phone light up. My mother, please reconsider. Your father is trying to secure your future. My brother Trent, LOL. Good luck out there. I hear Trader Joe's is hiring. They thought they'd broken me. They hadn't. Not yet. I took a taxi to the airport that night, 2 bags and a rage I didn't yet know what to do with. When the driver asked, "Where to, sir?" I answered without thinking. Seattle. The next chapter of my life would begin in the rain. But this time, I would be the one writing the script. Seattle greeted me with a gray sky and cold drizzle that matched the numbness in my chest. I'd landed with 2 bags, a soaked hoodie, and the last $180,000 I had left after checking into a dingy hotel near Capitol Hill. It was the first time in my life I had to ask how much per night before handing over a card. For the first few days, I did nothing but sit in that cramped room, staring at the peeling wallpaper and listening to the sound of distant traffic and rain against the window. My phone buzzed constantly at first, family group chats I was still in, news alerts about Aldrich Holdings acquiring a new energy firm, even a gossip blog hinting at my quiet exit. I turned it all off. For a while, I lived like a ghost. Wake up. Eat a dry bagel. Walk the city aimlessly with a hoodie up. Try not to think about the mansion, the boardroom, the wine dripping from my face. Try not to think about how quickly they erased me. I thought I was strong enough to start over. I wasn't. 3 weeks in, I hit my lowest point. I'd found a small studio apartment that smelled like old paint and onions, and I spent days alone, no job, no structure, no one to talk to. I wasn't Kevin Aldrich, heir to a billion-dollar empire anymore. I wasn't anything. One night, after eating canned soup over a cracked sink, I stood in front of the mirror. My eyes looked hollow. My clothes hung loose. And in that moment, I whispered something I never thought I'd say. I don't know who I am without him. Because that was the truth. All my life, I had built myself around my father's approval. And now, stripped of it, I was nothing. Just a scared man in a cheap apartment with no clue what came next. But rock bottom is a strange place. It's quiet. No more pretending. No more performances. And it forces you to listen, to yourself. One morning, I wandered into a cafe for the Wi-Fi and warmth. I sat in the back corner with a cheap coffee, scrolling aimlessly on my old laptop. And that's when I heard them, 4 kids in their early 20s at the next table, hunched over a laptop with sketchpads, arguing about user interface and supply chain logistics. I eavesdropped. Couldn't help it. Their app idea? Ambitious, messy, but interesting. They wanted to connect local food producers directly to consumers, farmers, bakers, home chefs. No middleman. No corporations. The girl leading the group, sharp, energetic, Asian American with bright eyes, was named Riley. She had that same fire I used to fake in front of my father. I don't know what came over me, but I leaned forward and said, "You're making 3 fatal marketing assumptions." They turned. Silence. Riley blinked. "Excuse me." I pointed to their prototype on the laptop screen. "You're building trust backward. No one signs up to a food delivery app unless they trust the supplier. You need front-facing stories, not just product listings." They exchanged looks. Riley gave a slow smile. Okay, mystery man. You think you can help? I can try, I replied. That night, I stayed with them until 1 a.m. We scribbled notes on napkins. I showed them how to map a customer profile and write a brand story. I'd done million-dollar pitch decks for executives who barely listened. But here, these kids were hungry. And they were listening. The startup was called Forked Roots. Just 4 of them. Riley, the leader and coder. Sharp-tongued but generous. Noah, a goofy finance major with more ideas than sense. Lena, their designer, all black clothes and quiet brilliance. Samir, the operations guy who handled logistics with a beat-up spreadsheet. They let me hang around. I wasn't officially part of the team. I was Kevin, the mysterious guy in the back who helped smooth their pitch decks and tear apart bad ideas. I started feeling something I hadn't in years, useful. I helped them land their first $15,000 microgrant from a community initiative. I revised their messaging, helped with investor cold emails, even ran mock pitches. For the first time, I didn't lead. I supported. And it was, weirdly healing. But life doesn't just let you heal without testing you first. One afternoon, I walked into a networking mixer Riley dragged me to. And there, across the room, I saw someone who nearly made me vomit. Trent. My brother. My smirking, spoiled, untouched by consequence little brother, now proudly wearing the Aldrich Holdings logo on his lanyard, chatting up a potential VC like he'd earned a damn thing. He saw me too. And smiled. Like a cat spotting a mouse. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey big bro, nice hoodie. Want me to send a dry cleaner rec? I felt that old heat rise in my chest. The same fury I swallowed that night at the dinner table. I didn't respond. But inside, something shifted. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about reclaiming something. Not the family name. Not the empire. But my voice. And maybe, just maybe, turning every ounce of humiliation they gave me into the sharpest weapon I could wield. I wasn't looking for revenge, at least not consciously. I kept telling myself that. But after seeing Trent parading around like the heir to the Aldrich throne, shaking hands and pitching projects I helped design years ago, something inside me cracked. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about justice. All those years I worked my bones dry for that company, only to be discarded like a defective tool. And now, Trent, who used to cheat on high school economics tests, was the new poster boy for Aldrich Holdings. Nah. I couldn't let that stand. It started innocently. I was helping Forked Roots set up a CRM system for investor tracking, using some old scripts and spreadsheet tools I'd customized back when I worked at Aldrich Holdings. As I dug through my backups on an old hard drive, I found a folder labeled conf.pntx. It was buried under multiple encryption layers, something I'd created out of paranoia back when I still trusted no one at corporate. I nearly ignored it. But then I saw the date, Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. The same day my father finalized the Barrington pipeline deal, the deal he was trying to secure through my arranged engagement to Celeste. I opened the folder. Inside were financial records. Emails. Redacted property contracts. Offshore transfers. And one internal memo, unsigned, but with language I recognized. My father's favorite phrase, let them eat paper while we swallow the deed. It was a coordinated land acquisition scheme, a shell game designed to strip environmental protection zones of their legal designations by using dummy companies. They'd buy the land at dirt-cheap prices, rezone it through influence peddling, and flip it to Aldrich Holdings for massive construction projects. Illegal? Absolutely. Traceable? Barely. Unless someone knew what to look for. Unless someone like me had worked on the zoning analytics and noticed the irregular file metadata, the ones that linked directly back to my father's personal terminal. My stomach turned. I remembered those weeks when I asked Wallace why I was running numbers on land values in Oregon and Michigan. He said it was for practice. He was training me for bigger things. I was his pawn. His fall guy. He'd planned it all. If anything ever went south, those files would have had my name attached to the audit logs. He wasn't just controlling me. He was setting me up. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, wondering how far I was willing to go. Should I send the files to the authorities? Leak them anonymously to the press? Burn it all down? But some part of me knew, if I wanted real justice, not just noise, I had to be smarter. I had to hit Wallace where it hurt, his power, his control, his spotless legacy. And I had to do it in a way no one would see coming. The next morning, I took the files to Riley. She stared at the screen, stunned. "Kevin, this is huge." "Yeah." She scrolled through the chain of emails. "But, what are you going to do with it?" I didn't answer right away. Because the answer terrified me. Not because of the risk, but because of how badly I wanted to see him crumble. "Help me," I finally said. "Help me build a campaign. Something that'll expose this without looking like revenge." Her eyes widened. "A whistleblower campaign?" "Not just whistleblowing," I said. "A storm." Over the next few weeks, I crafted something I never thought I'd be capable of, a takedown disguised as a movement. We created a website called cleangrounds.org, disguised as a transparency initiative focused on real estate corruption. I used a pseudonym, David Lowell, and Riley helped me post infographics, videos, leaked memos, with the names scrubbed, all backed by carefully redacted data from the conf.pntx folder. At the same time, Forked Roots began to gain traction in the local community. Riley and the team worked night and day on the app's beta, and I quietly started arranging introductions with journalists under anonymous aliases. Then came the spark I didn't expect. An investigative podcast based in Oregon picked up on the site. They ran a full episode connecting the dots, how protected forest lands were mysteriously being sold off, rezoned, and developed by unnamed corporate giants. The dots weren't fully connected to Aldrich Holdings yet, but the line was being drawn. And Wallace? He had no idea the hands sketching that line were mine. Then, the opportunity came. One I could never have predicted. Riley called me one night, buzzing with excitement. "Kevin, the Washington Tech Leaders Council is holding an invite-only pitch event. One of our investors pulled strings, we're on the list." I hesitated. "I can't show my face," I said. "If my name shows up, it could tip them off." She paused. Then smirked. "Then don't show up as Kevin Aldrich. Show up as David Lowell." That name again. The alias that had already started to gain traction in activist forums. It was dangerous. Reckless. Possibly catastrophic. But it was perfect. The irony was almost poetic. I used to watch my father maneuver through power like a shark in still water, quiet, elegant, and lethal. I studied how he smiled during mergers and sliced throats during handshakes. Now here I was, wearing a thrift store blazer, preparing to walk into a tech investor summit under a fake name, using his very tactics to destroy him. Riley handed me a badge with my alias printed in bold. David Lowell, co-founder, Forked Roots. "Don't lock your jaw," she whispered. "You always do that when you're trying to act calm." I chuckled. "And how would you know?" "Because you're trying not to fidget with your ring finger. You've got tells, Kevin." It was the first time anyone had seen past the mask in a long time. We walked into that summit like we belonged. Forked Roots was on the presentation roster, and David was listed as head of strategic development. No one asked for a background check. No one recognized my face. That was the thing about privilege, it made people blind to anyone who'd lost it. We pitched to a room of VCs, reporters, and startup execs. I told the story of our app, how we wanted to put real power back in local producers' hands. They ate it up. After the presentation, a woman in a red blazer approached me. Sharp, early 40s, with a press badge. "You've got presence, David. Ever considered writing thought pieces? We'd love a guest article from you." I smiled. "Only if it's about accountability in business." She grinned. "That's the kind of fire our readers love." Bingo. Over the next 2 months, I became someone else. David Lowell started writing articles, first for small outlets, then for big-name business blogs. Op-eds about corporate corruption, real estate ethics, environmental abuse. All general. All vague. Until it was time to sharpen the knife. That's when I published a series of investigative pieces, anonymous sources, financial trails, shell corporations. All leading up to a name. Aldrich Holdings. Within 72 hours, cleangrounds.org went viral. Activists protested at Aldrich construction sites. Reddit threads exploded. Environmental lawyers started digging into Oregon and Michigan zoning contracts. Riley and I tracked every click, every repost, every shift in public sentiment like we were guiding a missile. And then it happened. Wallace Aldrich went on national television. "We categorically deny these slanderous accusations. Our company has followed every legal protocol. These online anarchists hiding behind masks are trying to sabotage honest business." I watched his interview on my laptop, sitting in that same tiny apartment with a bowl of stale cereal. And I smiled. Because I knew what was coming next. Inside the original files was a failsafe. A recording. A voice memo my father once left on a secure drive, intended for internal legal counsel. In it, he spoke candidly about needing the Barrington marriage to lock down the zoning pipeline. He referred to the land laundering strategy as our little chess game. His voice. Clear. Confident. Untouchable. Until now. I didn't release it all at once. Instead, I sent an edited transcript anonymously to 3 top-tier investigative outlets. The full recording. That was for the final blow. Around the same time, Forked Roots exploded in popularity. We were featured in a sustainable food documentary, and our user base tripled in 2 weeks. We secured angel investors, and I officially came on board full-time, as David, of course. Riley knew the truth. So did Noah, Lena, and Samir eventually. But they didn't care. They believed in me, not as Kevin Aldrich, failed heir, but as the man who helped them build something real. Still, part of me knew this had to end. I couldn't live under a fake name forever. And so I prepared the final stage. Not just to destroy Wallace. But to reclaim my identity, and make the world see who I had become. The timing was crucial. Aldrich Holdings was hosting its annual charity gala, a black tie event held in a Boston hotel ballroom. It would be streamed live, covered by press, and attended by state officials, CEOs, and, of course, Trent and my father. I got an invitation. Not as Kevin. But as David Lowell, representing Forked Roots, now considered an up-and-coming disruptor in the agri-tech space. Riley wasn't thrilled. "This feels like a suicide mission." Maybe. But I need to look him in the eye when it all comes down. She placed a hand on mine. "Then don't flinch. Not even once." That night, I walked into the Aldrich Gala in a suit I bought second-hand and a mind sharper than it had ever been. Everything was polished, crystal glasses, music, small talk. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension. The protesters outside. The growing media storm. The whispers about clean grounds and the whistleblower no one could identify. Then I saw him. Wallace Aldrich. Smiling. Charming. Posing for photos. He didn't see me at first. But when he did, his face barely changed. He was that good. "Kevin," he said, walking over with a flute of champagne. "Or should I say, David?" I froze. He leaned in. "You always did leave fingerprints." "Still cleaner than yours," I said quietly. He gave a slow smile. "Do you think this is revenge? Some pitiful tantrum from the son who couldn't handle his duty?" "No," I said. "This isn't revenge." I stepped closer. "It's justice." And at that exact moment, Riley, positioned in the control booth, hit play. The ballroom screens lit up. And my father's voice filled the air. The room went silent the second my father's voice hit the speakers. At first, most people assumed it was just another part of the gala presentation. A promotional video, maybe. Or a pre-recorded message. Something harmless. But then the words sank in. "This marriage will lock down the Barrington pipeline. If my son doesn't cooperate, we'll sideline him. Let him pout in exile. We'll have Trent sign the deals. The zoning trick will hold as long as the damn environmental watchdogs don't sniff around." Gasps. Confused murmurs. Champagne flutes froze in midair. Then another voice, an attorney's, I recognized it from old meetings. "Sir, you're aware this could be interpreted as conspiracy to commit fraud?" "Then interpret it in private. We've buried this deep. Let them eat paper while we swallow the deed." That line. That arrogant, self-assured line that had echoed through every backroom deal my father ever made. Now it echoed through the ballroom like a funeral bell. Cameras turned. Reporters clicked record. Phones came out. Whispers turned into stunned silence, then into panic. Wallace's face, stone cold, motionless. Not a flicker of surprise. But I could see the way his right eye twitched. The way his fingers gripped the champagne glass until his knuckles went white. I stepped away from him and toward the stage. A staffer tried to stop me, but Riley was already at the mic, introducing me. "Please welcome Kevin Aldridge." Yes, that Kevin Aldridge. I took the stage as dozens of heads whipped toward me. This was it. My moment. I was supposed to be silent, I began, my voice steady, cold. I was supposed to obey. I was supposed to marry someone I didn't love to keep this company's secrets intact. The audience was silent. Press badges flashed. Cell phones recorded everything. But when I said no, when I rejected a political marriage arranged without my consent, I was disowned, fired, evicted, and erased. Not just from the company. From my own family. I paused, scanning the crowd. My father thought I would disappear. That he could sacrifice me like a pawn. But pawns don't just vanish. Sometimes they come back as something else. The screen behind me showed graphs, maps, financial trails. Everything from the Clean Grounds investigation. Dated. Verified. Impeccable. I didn't do this out of vengeance, I said. I did it because the truth matters. Even when it's twisted. The last slide. A side-by-side photo of Wallace Aldridge, and the leaked memo with his voice signature verified by forensic analysts. I didn't need to say another word. The chaos erupted moments later. Board members stormed out. Reporters flooded the press line. Security approached the stage, but it was too late. The internet had already seen the live stream. The evidence was out there, backed up on servers in 3 different countries. And Wallace? He didn't flinch. He just stared at me. Not with hatred, but something worse, fear. He knew he'd lost. Backstage, Riley grabbed my arm. Holy hell, Kevin. That was insane. I smiled, exhausted. We're not done yet. The fallout came fast. Within 24 hours. Wallace Aldrich was placed under federal investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and environmental manipulation. The board of Aldrich Holdings issued a public apology and suspended him indefinitely. Trent tried to salvage face in the press but was eaten alive during a CNBC interview when someone pulled up an old video of him mocking protesters. Celeste Barrington, the woman I was supposed to marry, issued a statement denouncing the arrangement and backed the Clean Grounds initiative publicly. But for me, the victory wasn't about headlines. It was about standing on my own feet. It was about reclaiming my name. The next morning, I walked into the Forked Roots office with coffee for everyone. The team had stayed up all night watching the story trend on every platform. Riley walked up and said, "Well, you're officially infamous." I raised a brow. "Not famous?" "Nope. Infamous," she smirked. "But in a good way." I sat at my desk, my real one, this time. No suit. No performance. Just me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. They say when a house is built on sand, all it takes is one wave to bring it down. Wallace Aldrich wasn't facing a wave, he was facing a tsunami. Within a week of the gala, headlines dominated every outlet. Real estate tycoon investigated for land fraud. Environmental sabotage tied to Aldrich Holdings. Whistleblower revealed as disgraced son, Kevin Aldrich. The last one stung, but I owned it. I was no longer hiding. I was no longer ashamed. The empire my father built on intimidation and secrets was rotting from the inside, and the world was finally peeling back the wallpaper. I wish I could say it all ended cleanly. That justice was swift, that the truth washed over everything and left the world tidy. But the real world is messier than that. Wallace didn't go down quietly. He hired a team of lawyers, PR firms, and crisis managers. Claimed I forged the audio, manipulated data. Accused me of being an unstable son with a vendetta. But I'd learned his game. I knew how to counter every lie before he even opened his mouth. We had timestamps, server logs, metadata, and expert analysts who confirmed the authenticity of everything. And the public? They weren't buying his spin anymore. Especially not when more whistleblowers began to come forward. People from inside Aldrich Holdings. People who, once upon a time, had feared my father as much as I had. One of them was a name I hadn't heard in years, Margot Delaney, my old assistant. She emailed me with the subject line, "I'm ready to talk." We met at a quiet cafe in Seattle. She looked older, tired, but her eyes were sharper than I remembered. "I saw what you did, Kevin," she said. "I was there when they tried to rewrite you out of everything. I kept files. Records. Not because I was brave. But because I knew one day, someone might need them." She handed me a flash drive. Inside, contracts my father had hidden. Correspondence with politicians. Internal memos written by my brother, Trent, about how I was too soft to handle the family legacy. It was more than enough to kill what was left of Aldrich Holdings' credibility. But the part that hit hardest? A video clip from my last board meeting, before the Thanksgiving disaster. I stood at the head of the table, pitching a sustainable expansion model. My father cut me off mid-sentence. "Kevin, no one cares about your little pet projects. Either fall in line or step aside." I watched that clip 5 times. Not because it hurt, but because I finally saw myself clearly. I wasn't weak. I was never the failure. I was the threat he tried to crush before I saw my own worth. As Aldrich Holdings unraveled, Forked Roots flourished. Riley negotiated a game-changing partnership with several West Coast food co-ops. Our user base crossed 500,000. We were on track for series of funding. But more than that, people started reaching out. Not to David Lowell. To me. To Kevin. Former clients. College professors. Even estranged family members who had watched the gala meltdown. My mother wrote me a letter. Yes, a handwritten letter. She didn't apologize. Not exactly. But she said this. I never had the strength to leave the prison your father built. But watching you stand in front of him that night, I remembered what strength looks like. I am sorry I wasn't there sooner. I cried reading that. Quietly. Alone. And then I burned the letter. Not out of hate. Out of closure. And then Trent showed up. Literally. One rainy evening, I found him standing outside the Forked Roots office with a soaked umbrella and that same arrogant smirk he always wore. I opened the door slowly. You lost, Trent. He shrugged. Figured I'd see what kind of empire you're playing king in now. I laughed. This one doesn't need a king. Just leaders who give a damn. He stepped closer. You really think you've won? I'm not playing to win anymore, I said. I'm just playing by my own rules. He scoffed. You know Dad's going to come back from this. No, he won't, I said. Not this time. And for the first time in our lives. Trent looked small. I hope you're wrong, he muttered. Because if you're right, we've got nothing. I looked him dead in the eyes. No. You've got exactly what you earned. A few months after the gala, Wallace Aldridge, my father, was officially indicted on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit fraud, environmental violations, and political bribery. The trial date was set. Cameras rolled as he walked into the courthouse in his custom-tailored suit, flanked by lawyers, his face pale, drawn, no longer the lion of the boardroom, but a man watching his empire rot beneath him. I didn't attend the arraignment. I didn't need to. My justice didn't live in a courtroom. It had already happened the moment he flung that wine at my face and I walked out with my dignity intact. But there was one moment I couldn't avoid, the subpoena. As the key whistleblower, I had to testify. Riley offered to come with me. So did Noah and Lena. But I went alone. Because some moments in life, you have to face without armor. Inside that courtroom, I sat just 20 feet from the man who used to control every detail of my life. Wallace didn't look at me. Not once. His lawyers tried to paint me as bitter. As unstable. As a son lashing out for being cut off. But I was calm. Clear. Methodical. I spoke about the fake land purchases, the arranged political marriage, the way environmental zones were quietly rezoned and flipped for profit. I brought receipts. I brought timelines. I brought the truth. And I didn't raise my voice once. By the time I stepped down from the witness stand, I saw it. That flicker of something in Wallace's eyes. Regret? Maybe. Or maybe just the first time he realized I had become everything he wasn't. After the testimony, I walked outside to a wall of cameras and reporters. One shouted, "Mr. Aldrich. Do you have any comment about your father's downfall?" I paused. Then smiled. This isn't a downfall, I said. It's a correction. Back at Forked Roots, life moved on. We closed our first $1 million investment round. We expanded to Portland and San Francisco. Riley took over as CEO. She offered the job to me, but I said no. I didn't want to be the face of anything anymore. I just wanted to build something real, with people who saw me as I was. Not as an heir. Not as a failure. Just Kevin. A few weeks later, I stood at the edge of Discovery Park, looking out over the Pacific. Rain misted the sky. The air was sharp and clean. Behind me, Seattle glowed in the distance. I pulled out a photo from my jacket, an old one. Me, age 7, sitting on my father's lap in his old office. Smiling. Oblivious. I tore it in half. Let the pieces fall to the wind. Because I finally understood something. I wasn't made to inherit a legacy. I was made to build my own. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.